So now, bear with me for a second. If you were to ask every single American that is out there regarding what they know about Memorial Day, most of the time they'll ask it's about barbecues, it's about airplanes, it's about rallies, it's about this whole idea of a level of patriotism when it comes down to the American US Army. But most of the time they don't even know the origins of when Memorial Day even happened. But of course, before we move on with the history lesson on Memorial Day and how it all started, I do want to make a quick disclaimer here because given the muddy waters of the American politics of today, I am just here to teach you a history lesson about when a holiday began. I don't want to talk about politics or whether you're pro-patriot or anti or if you're for or against the army, all that kind of stuff. Today, or at least this weekend for many Americans, is to celebrate the fallen soldiers of the past. It's to kind of celebrate all of that and to kind of teach you guys when exactly Memorial Day happened. So with that out of the way now, let's start asking a couple of questions here because that's obviously what history is all about. How is it that Memorial Day is so remembered as an American tradition and I guess holiday, as you do take a vacational break and it's considered a Memorial Day weekend? So similar to Thanksgiving, a lot of times a lot of people don't work. It's kind of considered a federal holiday. All of that is sort of intertwined within the confines of what makes Memorial Day a very American holiday. But the question is, when did it actually start? Like, when did the first ever Memorial Day happen? And why is it that we celebrate it, or at least we honor those who have fallen since that moment in time? And so in order to answer that question, we got to go all the way back in American history to the 1860s, where the American Civil War happened from 1861 to 1865, as the North and the South were fighting against each other over slavery and the rights for many Americans at the time. And this is a civil war that we are plenty of familiar with in terms of American history, as it is often brought up and taught in schools here in America. I hope so, at least. But it is also a nexus event in the sense that there are a lot of things in American history that still to this day made an impact because of the American Civil War. You see, after the war, and especially after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln and the John Wilkes Booth incident, a lot of people were starting to question their sort of reality in terms of who they are as an American. After all, it was a brother versus brother fight, as it's commonly referred to when it comes down to this American Civil War. As often the case is, literal brothers from the North and the South would fight against each other simply because they had different belief systems. And here in this case, after everything was said and done and they finally decided to, put down their arms, what is there to do for their fallen brethren? And so an answer was given by the name of General John A. Logan, who in 1866, after the events of the American Civil War, simply asked a question that was so simple but yet so impactful that it laid the foundation of American holidays and culture today, which is, why don't we just commemorate and pay tribute to all of those that have fallen during the course of the Civil War and even those prior to that as a means to pay tribute for their services. And thus, the origin story of Memorial Day began from there. Although originally Memorial Day wasn't really called Memorial Day, as John A. Logan decided to call it Decoration Day, as they would go to the graves of those that have fallen and they would decorate their graves as a means to pay their tribute. And this was often the case with flowers, a tradition that is still done in American society today when it comes down to paying tribute to all our fallen soldiers here in the US. But whether or not the interpretations and historical analysis of why flowers and decoration specifically for this, a lot of times we can often assume from a sociological perspective that in reality, John A. Logan wanted these people to remind them that they weren't just soldiers, but they were also fighters. And given the context of the Civil War, where it was often considered a brother versus brother fight, both metaphorically and quite literally in some cases, this was meant to showcase that each and every American is a brother in arms, no matter the circumstances. And from here is where Memorial Day truly solidified itself and all the years to come to follow. And from here is where the groundwork of paying tribute and service to all of those that have fallen for the sake of pride and country here in the US, Decoration Day began to become such an important part of American history and culture that it wasn't until World War I where the name change from Decoration Day to Memorial Day began, as well as the inception of Veterans Day in November. From here we see that they not only wanted to pay tribute to those that have fought in the past, but also that had fought in current wars of those times, such as World War I, World War II, Korean War, the Vietnam War, such a major event in American history in terms of wartime, as well as the impact and mentality when it comes to voluntary work in the army and all that, and army service. And of course today, with the thousands of modern wars that America has been a part of, whether or not you agree or disagree with. After all, again, going back to the disclaimer here, I am not here to interpret the reality of why we went to war, but rather the history of why Memorial Day exists as part of our American traditions and culture. Of course, in modern context today, Memorial Day is often regarded as a Memorial Day weekend where there's a lot of sales going on in American, retail stores and all that. Similar to Thanksgiving, there's not parades, but there are sort of ceremonies and services to kind of bring a positive light in terms of American voluntary work and the services of our fallen soldiers and brethren. And it is roughly a good time in quotations in terms of the honor and pride of what it means to be an American. But it is important to understand the origin story behind Memorial Day, because as an American, for those that are out there, for those that are outside of the US and wanted to learn more about Memorial Day, because I'm sure a lot of you guys have a similar version of this, it is important to understand that no matter the context of what's going on today in American society, no matter what is happening, even at this moment in time for when this video is uploaded, the history of Memorial Day should be regarded as a day where we just want to celebrate those who just wanted to be an American. They fought for their beliefs, whether they were right or wrong. Again, those are all interpretive in terms of historical analysis. We can talk about that on a different date. But no matter the case, Memorial Day is a day where we celebrate and we honor those that have fallen and did their very best to promote the price of freedom and ensure the security of all the Americans that live in the US today. And I think that is a very important lesson that we should learn in regards to Memorial Day. Again, whether or not you have different attitudes towards this particular holiday. But I don't want to leave things in a somber tone, since it is important to keep a positive atmosphere and a positive vibe. And when it comes to history, it is important to learn the lessons from the past and apply into the future here. And so I hope you guys learn the same thing as well. If you're an American, here, pay tribute to those who have fallen, celebrate it as best as you can, and if you don't, that's completely okay. We live in a free country after all. But hey, that's all on American history for now. We'll talk maybe a little bit more in terms of the foundation of America, such as the Declaration of Independence when 4th of July hit. Maybe we could talk about George Washington, the very first president of the United States, and how actually he never wanted to be president in the first place. And we could talk on and on about the plethora and annals of records when it comes down to American history. But for right now, Professor History wants you all to have a memorable Memorial Day for those that are Americans out here watching the channel. And for those that aren't, I hope you guys understand the respect and pay the same amount of tribute as those that are going to do the same as well. But hey, this is Professor History signing off. Thank you all for listening on today's history lesson. Have a fantastic Memorial Day weekend, and I'll see you all with that next history lesson.